Welcome back in. Welcome back in. It's your boy Mike coming back at y'all, man. Off season, beginning of the off season, fresh off a thrilling Super Bowl 59 victory over the Buffalo Bills. Josh Dobbs, man, just a winner. Did not lose a single start this season. Filled in for an injured Glen Roberts. Saw Roberts go down again. Dobbs took us the rest of the way and took care of business in every game, in every rematch that we had in the postseason run. And our Super Bowl MVP, the first Arizona Cardinals Super Bowl in their history, Andrew Stinson, had two huge interceptions in that game, both coming in the red zone with Buffalo driving, threatening to score. He took one for a pick six, picked off another at the 1 yard line. And in both seasons now, there has been an NFC champion. Last year it was Dallas. This year, though, it is the Arizona Cardinals. And man, head coach Mike White, in just his second season, able to accomplish something that none of the prior Cardinals head coaches were able to, and that's getting a Lombardi in the building. Ty Davis Price. I know Stinson, well-deserved MVP, but Ty Davis Price with 3 touchdowns on the ground, really propelling us forward. Dobbs threw no touchdowns in that game, did not account for a single one. Gabe Davis, of course, man, 6 for 164 in the score. We had a lot of problems with him in that game, but we did enough to be able to go ahead and finish things out. We're going to go ahead and take a look at retirements here. See a couple of notable names. Matt Prater, our former kicker. Pat Pete and Cam Hayward for the Steelers. Those are big losses. Demario Davis and Cam Jordan for the Saints. Khalil Mack now out of the division, out of the league, retiring after 11 years. Fletcher Cox ends his career in Las Vegas. Carson Wentz retiring. Stephon Gilmore. You see a couple more names there. Corey Linsley, Danico Autry, who did not record a single sack in the regular season, did have one in the postseason for us. And Russell Wilson, man, that must be breath of fresh air for Denver. They're getting out of the last few years of that big contract. And you see Von Miller here, man, really sad that he wasn't able to get a Super Bowl this year with Buffalo. This was probably his best chance. Buffalo was the best team in the league in the regular season. They had a stacked roster. You see Casey Hayward there retiring as well. And he's going to go into retirement, man, off of a Super Bowl loss. He does have a Super Bowl, of course, won the one against Carolina back in, 2015. But they thought that they had all the makings of something special, and they did. But that Josh Dobbs magic, man, of course, even though he didn't really have a great game in the Super Bowl itself, just win, baby. That's all you need to do is win, and that's exactly what he propelled this team to do. The defense certainly started to come on a lot better towards the back half of the season and into the playoffs. Of course, Buffalo did score 34. We gave up 33 against Detroit. Most of those points with Detroit, though, were when the game was already well within our grasp. Dallas scored 24 against us, and then Carolina really not having a great game. They scored 21. As you see, Ty Davis Price now up to an 87 overall plus 1 acceleration. And man, can we just talk about Ty Davis Price for a second? This is somebody who the 49ers essentially threw away. And, it was warranted. You have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. I mean, he's going to get certainly the lion's share of touches in that offensive backfield. But then you also had, Elijah Mitchell, who is good to, run in between the tackles, more of that power back, although McCaffrey is no slouch when it comes to the power game. Let's make that perfectly clear. Andrew Stinson now up to an 87 overall. But Ty Davis Price, every time we play the Niners, Ty Davis Price runs with just a different passion than he does, generally speaking. And he followed up in his second season, his first with us, second in the league. He started that off by leading the league in rushing. after being traded for 2 4th-round picks, followed that up with a third place finish this season. BJ Ojulari was certainly disappointing, all things considered. Made a big play in the Super Bowl with that sack of Josh Allen. Of course, the very next play they did score with a nice strike to Gabe Davis, but, forcing them into a 2nd and 19. And, for the second straight year, it was Cam Thomas who led the way for this team in sacks. Ojulari just, despite that X factor, and I'm honestly shocked that he kept it with his lack of production. But, we anticipated that we might need a new bookend for Ojulari, when we first started this franchise. And Cam Thomas has been the better of the two. Now, happy to have him. Ojulari is just going into his third season. After this offseason, he'll be going into his third season. And, he's still just 23 years old. So certainly plenty of room to continue to develop. He's by no means a finished product. Cameron Dicker there. Glen Roberts, man. Rough first season. Just threw way too many interceptions, did not have a good just reading of the field, wasn't really able to throw guys open. He really relied very heavily on, Rashad Bateman. I mean, as he should, with him being one of, if not the best receiver in the league currently. But he was overthrowing guys left and right, didn't use his legs as much as he, probably should have. And it certainly hurt to see us suffer that 4-game losing streak, and him being one of the primary cogs in that. Carolina and Buffalo, the defense just did not show up. And, you're talking about scoring 40 points to win those games. Fine. Okay, you can write those off. Against the Rams, a team that we've had beaten earlier in the season and have had success against through these first 2 years, you would expect, especially down 20-6 early, defense gets you back in the game with a pick six and then, gives you the ball back so you're able to go down and score, but then not able to finish the job, and then getting hurt again against Seattle in what ended up being our 4th straight loss. Played incredibly well against Detroit in his return after his broken ribs injury, but, wasn't able to finish that one out. Ended up breaking his ribs again. And, we stuck with Josh Dobbs, of course, the rest of the way. And Josh Dobbs led us to a Super Bowl, man. It's very eerily reminiscent of what happened in Philadelphia. Of course, Roberts was not in his second year. He was just a rookie. And Dobbs did not have nearly the resume that Nick Foles had as a backup. But, and Roberts was not playing like an MVP candidate by any means. But, quarterback goes down, backup comes in, familiar with the team, familiar with the scheme, and he's able to make an impact and just lead the team to wins. He's able to rally the guys around him, shows that leadership quality that, you want in your quarterback. And it's going to be interesting to see, how this offseason pans out with the way that the season ended with Glen Roberts, watching from the sideline with a clipboard in his hand. But let's go ahead now and take a look at the yearly stats. As we were talking about Glen Roberts, 3,468 yards, 30 touchdowns, 25 interceptions. Just unacceptable. That completion percentage, 52%, very, 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 very low. And a passer rating of just 84.1. Got sacked 23 times. It's just not what you want to see. The touchdown numbers are really good. Even the yards per game are, manageable. But 25 interceptions when you played 13 games is just insane. That's 2 a game. That's an average of 2 a game. Josh Dobbs had 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He also threw quite a few interceptions. But, there's just something about, and then DTR down there as well in his one short relief stint did throw a touchdown. But there's something about Dobbs, man, that the team just loves. I'm not sure what it is, if it's his command of the huddle, whatever it might be. Ty Davis Price, though, here, 263 carries, 1,547 yards, 7 touchdowns at 5.9 yards per carry. Did have a long of 62 and quite a few yards after contact there with 421. Antonio Gibson, 80 carries, 579 yards, 3 scores. Did not fumble at all. Also had a long of 61. And as you see, with the downs played, Ty Davis Price 594 to Antonio Gibson's 532. We do have, a true load share. Antonio Gibson gets, a decent amount of carries, but he also does do a lot of good work in the pass game. Glen Roberts, 407 yards and 6 touchdowns on 40 carries. A lot of those more designed runs versus scrambles. But, we've seen that he's able to be a lot more effective when he takes advantage of his legs. Josh Dobbs getting in there twice as well. Darnell Washington with 1. And the play action game is something that this offense has really predicated itself on, Josh Dobbs runs it beautifully. DTR hasn't really had a whole lot of run in the system, so we're not quite sure what he's going to do. Well, if he would be able to do the things that Dobbs does with it. But Roberts just, those layered throws, making those passes into the middle of the field, he has trouble. He doesn't see the defenders lurking, and it leads to a lot of interceptions. Rashad Bateman, though, despite the uncertainty at quarterback throughout the year, 89 catches, over 2,000 yards there at 2,048 and 23 scores. Taking advantage of, having a rookie quarterback, having him get hurt and going back to your old quarterback who's really not that good of a quarterback but works well for your team. It's a very interesting dilemma there. As you see Trey McBride second on the team in catches, yards, and scores with 60 for 893 and 11 touchdowns. Also outsnapped Rashad Bateman on the season, which is very, very interesting. But you got to think, there are certainly going to be a handful of plays throughout the year where, you're in a heavy set and you're not going to have any receivers out there, and Trey McBride is going to be there. Rondale Moore, 42 for 769 and 5 touchdowns. Numbers down across the board this year for him. But, of course, he says he played 14 games. He did technically, but, the Cowboys game where he got hurt and missed the rest of the regular season, he only played a handful of snaps. So, just not really a true representation, but even his yards per game were down just a bit. Chase Claypool here, 249, 2 touchdowns, both in that Packers game with Dobbs coming in his first start. Antonio Gibson had 19 catches for 230 and 2 scores. Ty Davis Price, about the same number of catches, one more, 126 yards and a touchdown. KJ Hamler, just 9 catches on the year. 3 of them were touchdowns, and one was a huge one against Dallas. And then you see down there, Darnell Washington and Elijah Higgins with a few catches apiece as well. DJ Humphries, 8 tackles, 8 sacks allowed. Cesar Ruiz for the rookie. Keegan Buchanan, who actually led the team in downs played, the offensive line in downs played, just allowing 3 sacks on the season. Paris Johnson remains a pillar there on the right side, giving up 2. Dalton Murray, of course, finished in the top 10 for best offensive lineman, giving up just 1. Zaven Collins leading the team in tackles, 117. Lewis Cine, was not impressed by Lewis Cine in pretty much any capacity this year, but he did finish with 101 tackles, so we knew his run support was really the best part of his game, and he certainly lived up to that. Andrew Stinson, don't want to see so many tackle numbers. I feel like that means he's really giving up a lot more yards than he needs to. Cam Wilhelm down here with 41 tackles as well, but he didn't become a starter until pretty late into the season at the trade deadline. B.J. Ojulari did lead the team in tackles for loss, though, with 18, followed behind Zaven Collins, Cameron Thomas, Juan Drummond, and Cam Wilhelm with 10 in his limited action. Really, really good there. Lewis Cine with 6 tackles for loss. And as we mentioned, Cameron Thomas leading the way in sacks for the squad, 10 sacks. Juan Drummond with 5. Ojulari just 4.5 after a rookie season that saw him record 8. Just not great overall. He did get back there and get pressure. I'm not going to act like he was not an effective force, because he was. But, sacks sacks are necessary. You can pressure the quarterback all you want, man, but you got to finish those plays off sometimes. You can't let them get around you. You can't lose your grip on them. You got to really just make sure that you're doing what you need to do. As you see, Zaven Collins there, 3.5, Wilhelm with 3, Lewis Cine and Jalen Thompson each had 2 as well. Of course, last year, Jalen Thompson had 6 sacks, which was very, very good. And just not something you can expect overall, though. Zaven Collins leading the league with 9 interceptions, and 2 of those coming against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season finale to take the lead. And then you see a bunch of guys down there with 4. Jalen Johnson had 5. Greedy Williams. I think, from obviously a strictly numbers perspective, Greedy Williams certainly regressed a little bit from last year, which you wouldn't have expected, especially with them adding a more quality third corner. But he made huge plays. He made a lot of big plays in the playoffs, picking off Jared Goff, the very first play of the game in that one. Just really doing his thing, holding his own. And he sees a lot of other teams' number ones. It's obviously our scheme generally does not see anyone follow, although we do from time to time. If we're in a particularly difficult matchup, we will have the matchup set based on the overalls. But Greedy sees a lot of those number ones. He was able to do his thing, corral 4 interceptions. As you see, Cam Dicker missed just 1 kick the entire season, long as 63. Tommy Townsend, maybe a slight upgrade over Nolan Cooney from last year. We didn't punt super often, about twice a game on average. But when we did punt, he wasn't really able to boom those deep ones. KJ Hamler did have a kick return and punt return touchdown. He was our primary return man. We'll see what happens with him this offseason. Of course, he no longer has a contract with us. And as you take a look around the league, I'm going to go ahead and throw these up on the screen, but I am just going to continue to talk about the team a little bit. We talked about Glen Roberts, talked about Ty Davis Price and Rashad Bateman. How about Rondale Moore, man, who we were, brushing on when we were talking about his stats? Rondale Moore expressed his, I don't want to say frustration, but maybe his displeasure with the way that the offense had been running under Glen Roberts. It's very disheartening when you're consistently getting open, whether it be short, medium, or deep, and your quarterback just can't get you the ball. And that's something that Rondale Moore struggled with this year. Of course, he went over 1,000 yards last season, but was not able to replicate that due in part Rashad Bateman is going to command the majority of those targets. I mean, he's one of the best in the league, so, that is for good reason. But also, again, Roberts and him just really never got that connection going. They did put some work in during the summer before the start of the year, but just weren't able to find that same page when it came down to game time and time to make things happen. So moving forward, we will look to get Rondale Moore more involved the way that he was last year. He has no problem playing second fiddle because, there's not a universe in this Cardinals world where he would ever command more targets than Rashad Bateman in a macro sense. Maybe in a micro sense, a 1 game or 2 game sample size, he could make that happen. But he's a good playmaker in his own right. He's progressed a lot since the beginning of head coach Mike White's tenure, and we want to make sure that we're keeping our playmakers happy offensively. Trey McBride, very happy. Ty Davis Price, Antonio Gibson, very happy. Rashad Bateman, couldn't be more enthusiastic, although we did leave some meat on the bone as far as yards go for him with so many just bad passes from Glen Roberts. So we'll certainly be looking to go back to, a focus on Rondale Moore. We got Rashad Bateman and Trey McBride as Rashad Bateman as our primary target, Trey McBride as a tight end. So, those route concepts are just a little bit different. Certain routes are going to call for Trey McBride to pretty much always be that first read. But we are going to have Glen Roberts and Rondale Moore, hook up a little bit during this summer, during the off season, get some work in, and try to get on the same page, man. Roberts is now going into what will likely be a very critical year too. Uh, it'll be a very critical year. Seeing your backup at the beginning of the season come in, right the ship that you wronged, and then lead your team to their first Super Bowl, man. It can definitely shake the mind of a young player. It could shake the mind of a veteran player, but certainly going to be a priority to look forward to as we go into next season. We mentioned Ty Davis Price finishing number 3 in the league, just 35 yards behind Christian McCaffrey, but he did have a lot more carries, about 30 more carries. So if I was a betting man, I'd say 30 more carries for Ty Davis Price would close a 35-yard gap. But unfortunately, this time around, just third in the league. The offensive line, all right, DJ Humphries, that's going to be something that we're going to have to certainly keep an eye out for as he continues to age. He's going into his last season with under contract with the team, but he's been a very good left tackle, man. Like, no complaints. Yes, he gets beat, by some of these elite pass rushers, but most linemen get beat by elite pass rushers pretty often. So, not the end of the world. We'll have to see what we want to go there. Keegan Buchanan at left guard, the rookie number 1 overall pick. Of course, we drafted him as a right tackle, moved him inside just because he wasn't developed enough to justify starting him over DJ Humphries or Paris Johnson, and we've liked him at left guard. I mean, I know it's definitely unorthodox having a number 1 overall pick be a guard, but at the end of the day, man, you want to get players on your team that can work in the system, that can really do their thing, and we think that, guard might be his position for the foreseeable future. Nothing set in stone, but we really liked his development, again, especially towards the end of the year, so we'll be looking forward to seeing how he continues to progress as the years go on. Center Dalton Murray, all fellow rookie with Keegan Buchanan, had his ups and downs, not the best in the run blocking game, actually below average in that by a pretty healthy margin. But he did finish in the top 10 for best offensive lineman. He finished there. Of course, as a center, you have more room for error as a center. You got a guy on either side of you. And a lot of times especially if you're facing, a 4-man look, you're going to have some help. And Dalton Murray, certainly him and Buchanan, hoping to see them shine and grow together and be part of a formidable offensive front, giving Roberts or whoever should line up under center some more time to make things happen. Right guard, you got Cesar Ruiz. Will Hernandez, we did not re-sign, so he'll likely be moving on elsewhere at the conclusion of free agency. But Cesar Ruiz, solid, slightly above average right guard. We're happy with him. And then Paris Johnson at right tackle, of course, going to be going into his 3rd season. He's been a linchpin of this offensive line. We've really enjoyed having his presence. He's a true professional, does what he needs to do, comes in, works, goes home. And so that's it offensively. I do think we hit everybody. Defensively, the interior of that defensive line is going to see pretty significant shakeups this offseason. Danico Autry retiring. We do have Folu Fatukasi under contract still. We do have Juan Drummond, of course, at defensive tackle. But after Drummond and Fatukasi, I mean, the cupboard's pretty bare. Dante Stills, who was in his 2nd season, progressed, decently well, but he still sits at just a 71 overall, and it's just the path for playing time for him is going to be difficult, and with him being, going into his age 25 season, just not really sure how much time there truly is to get him to that next level, as far as being a possible every down contributor. But Certainly going to be looking to shake things up there. Of course, our bookend pass rushers, Ojulari, Cam Thomas, we talked extensively about them already. Also, you got Zaven Collins and Cam Wilhelm at linebacker. I know we did see a lot of J-Ron Curse in that linebacker role as well as just something that I thought was very interesting. The two worst teams in the league both ended up with 4 wins, and it's shocking, quite frankly. And then you see a bunch of teams here with 6 wins, including the Kyler Murray-led Vikings. Seattle finishing with 6 wins. Glad they beat us, man, them and the Rams, because, just mess up that draft positioning, go ahead a little lower. The Rams were just a game out of the playoffs there. But yes, J-Ron Curse played plenty of linebacker for us, especially in our dime looks. Cam Wilhelm taking over as the starter after we traded Kaiser White mid-season. We just didn't, even though having him as a veteran presence in the room can be helpful, we had no plans to re-sign him. And we had a young linebacker, who's not as good as Kaiser out the gate, but is able to, have time to develop and progress and really hone those skills. Wilhelm's just 22 years old, so certainly something to keep an eye out for moving forward. The safety tandem, Jalen Thompson and Lewis Seen, are going to return. Lewis Seen, of course, we're going to have to make a decision on his 5th-year option here pretty shortly, and we'll see where head coach Mike White decides to lean. Jalen Thompson, man, one of the leaders of this defense, of this team, and his presence was really on display in quite a few of those playoff games, man, just making big tackles, covering up receivers on big plays and, forcing things to just go awry. So he's certainly going to be someone that we continue to build around at corner. Jalen Johnson, Andrew Stinson, and Greedy Williams are a very, very good top 3. And then you have Israel Mukwamu, of course, back with a fresh contract, and Garrett Williams. You got C.J. Henderson, Rajon Wright, Keitrell Clark. You got a lot of guys, for sure. Got a lot of guys that or that you're hoping are going to be able to make plays when and if their name is called. And then, from a special team standpoint, got Cameron Dicker, Tommy Townsend. Dicker was fantastic. Again, only missed 1 kick all year. I can't even remember what kick that might have been. He was just so excellent. But, yeah, did miss 1 kick throughout the year. Has a big, big leg. We went from Matt Prater into Cameron Dicker. And, Matt Prater was one of the most powerful legs in NFL history, If you remember, before Justin Tucker hit the 66-yarder against the Lions a couple years back, or that might have actually been last season in real life. But before he did that, Matt Prater held the record for longest field goal, a 63-yarder in Denver. So he's retired now. We got Cameron Dicker, Tommy Townsend again. We don't really punt a whole lot. Like, I do punt on 4th downs. You all have seen plenty of times I do that. I'm not really a big go for it on 4th down outside of maybe 1 or 2 yards. But Townsend, he has a good leg on him. Young, has some speed as well. So if in case he does ever get his number called in that kind of situation, we can make some things happen in that sense. And one big thing that I did want to hit on as well, our defensive coordinator had let's call it a rough go this year. Now, we thought that might be the case with him being in his first year as a true defensive coordinator, calling those plays, making sure that the defense is ready to go, playing that chess match with the opposing offensive coordinator. And even though he did struggle, and struggle is really putting it very mildly, head coach Mike White wants to give him at least 1 more year. Just, the guys now have a year under their belt in the system. They played their best defensively down the stretch run. Buffalo is just, their offense is insane. Josh Allen is one of the best in the league. Pair him with Stephon Diggs, who's certainly a top, 5 to 7 receiver. Give him a Gabe Davis, who outside of T. Higgins may be the best number 2 in the league. Just just talent all around. And yes, we did give up 34 points to them on that occasion. But, it's the Super Bowl. We knew we were going against an offensive buzzsaw, and we still managed to handle business. So I think that now having another full off season under their belt to get familiar with everything, as well as, some of our rookies, Andrew Stinson, Juan Drummond, getting back onto the field now for year two. And yeah, the understanding should just be a little bit better as we progress through. But all in all, like, I'm very, very happy about where this team currently is, the direction that we have taken them. Head coach Mike White has taken them. It's been a fun ride. Of course, did not anticipate winning a Super Bowl in the second season. But, I mean, you see the way that this team really gets up for Josh Dobbs. They wanted to win him one, clearly. He wanted to win one himself. We have developed our young talent. Zaven Collins has become a star, one of the best linebackers in the league. Jaron Kearse filled in admirably in that sub linebacker role when called upon. Now, he's not young. Rashad Bateman, who might not be homegrown technically, certainly became a star with us. As you see right here, Israel Mukwamu back on a 2-year deal. His interest spiked up from where it was earlier in the season. Not going to re-sign anyone else, not going to use that franchise tag. And Lewis Seen is not going to be having his 5th-year option picked up, which means that going into this coming season, he will be playing for a contract, whether with us or with somebody else. And now mock draft 3, first mock draft here out of the offseason, and you see the Texans there projected to take a corner, Raekwon Robinson, 6'3". Not often you'll see a corner projected to go so high. We'll see as we continue through this process what direction they decide to take things. And you see very much an offensive lineman, like an offensive defensive line type of draft. Yes, pass rushing linebackers. I know maybe you don't consider them truly defensive linemen, but like Von Miller is a defensive lineman. He is a pass rushing linebacker, but he is certainly a defensive lineman. And we're projected here to take receiver DeMar Brown, who has great to elite speed and acceleration. The catch in traffic is scary, though, at D. B catching, though, B deep route, B release, and B spectacular catch. That medium route running with C to F probably not going to be too good, but I'm not sure that we're in the market for a first-round wide receiver. I'm just not sure that would make a ton of sense for us. We already are, barely able to feed everyone that we have now, and adding a third head into that mix is certainly not going to make things, wouldn't make things easier as far as that goes. But yeah, man, here we go. We are now just 1 week away from the first week of free agency, and here it is. We are here. Boom. We got 80 million in cap space to work with. And let's take a look at this free agency class. You got Joel Bitonio highlighting it, Wyatt Teller, couple good guards in there, DeAndre Hopkins, Tua Tagovailoa, Jerry Jeudy, DJ Reader, Landon Dickerson. You got Ryan Jensen, Zadarius Smith, could be looking to latch on to a Super Bowl contender. We'll see where he ends up. Josh Uche, another very young, good pass rusher. Bobby Wagner going back into free agency after being in it last year. Got Deion Dawkins. So Deion Dawkins gone from Buffalo. Von Miller retired. Taron Johnson, a free agent as well. Man, that certainly was their best chance. And really, really got a feel for those Buffalo fans that they weren't able to get it done in that respect. But let's go ahead and just take one more little deeper dive into a few of these prospects that, I've been keeping an eye on. The way that I do my scouting, I like to kind of take a look at the top, see what the consensus is, see what those initial ratings are looking like. When you have somebody 50% scouted, you're not always able to tell, but, a D or F rating in a rating that really matters for that position, that is certainly cause for concern. just in general. So I like to take a look at that, and I feel like, when you have players like that, you can kind of rule them off. But then I go player by player, or position by position, rather, to get a better idea of just what it is that I'm looking for. And Darrell Pollard, who you see as a round 2 to 3 talent, I'm shocked. I mean, you see D carrying, D catching traffic, D deep route running, and he's not even as fast as I thought he might have been. He was somebody I potentially was thinking about drafting, but certainly not going to use a premium pick on that type of player. Nolan Broyles, he's been the top of the receiver boards, since the beginning of the season. Ran a 4.42, has very, very good change of direction skills. Ran a 6.743 cone. The vertical jump's a little low, 35 inches, but I mean, you see here a spectacular catch, a short route, a medium route. This guy is a baller, and whoever is able to get him early in the first round, man, they're going to have found themselves likely a true wide receiver 1. Taking a look at the left tackles, I mean, we already briefly went over some of these guys, but Cole Lawton, clearly the best of the bunch. And, now that he's 100% scouted, you see the Broncos, Cowboys, and Rams, good fits for Lawton, supposedly. Not sure that any of them are in position for that to happen. And even in a case like Denver, are you in a position for it to happen and it makes sense? Are you going to use a premium pick on a left tackle when your quarterback position currently is unsolved? A lot of things to think about. Left guards, nothing too much that we were looking at, but how about center James Rivera? 3rd to 4th projection, but round 1 to 2 talent. A pass block, A awareness, B run block, just 21 years old. Didn't have an amazing combine, 33 reps though on the bench, and at 5, running a 5.2 at his size, certainly impressive. And, outside of the run blocking, finesse, and power, I do think that this could be a potentially solid pick, maybe taking over for the veteran Cesar Ruiz, but at the bare minimum could just serve as a swing guard of sorts. And you see right here, Matt Hayward, another, non-first round offensive lineman that kind of caught my eye. The run blocking is a C, but you see a lot of A's there, 29 reps, so even lower than Lawton, but either way, should be looks like he'll be a pretty quality player, although those run blocking ratings are scary. A lot of D's in there. Now, moving on to right tackle, we already went over these guys a little bit in a previous video. Justin Goodwell, round 1 to 2 talent, should project out to be the best offensive lineman in this draft. For the right tackles. And similar to Rivera with that C run block finesse and run block power, something that Justin Goodwell is going to have to certainly work on. Moving to the defense, this is where we really are going to try to hit, the interior of the defensive line is a big need, potentially a safety. We're just not sure what's going to happen with Lewis Seen. And, I don't want to be caught with, no plan should we let Lewis Seen go at any point without re-signing him. And Denario Stewart here, left end. I know he's listed as a left end, but he's a 3-4 end, which means he would play tackle with us, defensive tackle likely. But he's going to get plenty of pass rushing opportunities wherever he goes because he does have a pretty refined skill set, and he's also able to stop the run to a pretty good degree. Defensive tackle-wise, Sean Claiborne was one guy, although the finesse moves were a little low for me. Just 21 years old, though, and at B block shedding and, decent power moves as well. Certainly going to be a good player, just not quite sure how high that ceiling is for him. But we will see for Claiborne, projected to go in the 1st or 2nd round. And, no obvious super big weaknesses, but definitely a couple things in there that you can improve, that he could improve on. Scrolling through some more of these defensive tackles, and how about George Cage out of Alabama? We know that Nick Saban truly prepares his players, to be pro ready. And with B block shed, A finesse moves, B tackling, looks like this could be one of the steals of the draft. 31 reps, and he is on the lighter side, at 293. But if we were to acquire him, We'd likely move him to end so he could be a true 3-4 end rather than defensive tackle, because at 293 you're just not big enough to be, an every down nose tackle or anything like that. Linebackers were not something we were interested in, whether coverage or be it coverage or pass rushers. But we are going to take a look at a few of these corners. You see, corner, not a pressing need for us. However, again, Jalen Johnson has his moments up and down. Greedy Williams is going to be going into his age 27 season, so regression is coming at some point. So this could be a bit of a refill of the coffers, if you will, as we take a look here at Mark Conley, cornerback, round 2 to 3. The play recognition makes him pretty much undraftable. Zone coverage at a D. We don't run a whole lot of zone, but you definitely cannot have a D rating in that department if you want to play for us and this organization. And then again, the safeties, we weren't really looking too closely at anyone in particular. Cersei looks pretty good, but again, just looks more like a Lewis Scene regen type of thing. But that is going to do it for us here in this one, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to tune in next time when we get free agency and the draft underway. Be sure to like and subscribe should you feel so inclined. Y'all have a great rest of y'all day, and peace.